And pray over the food.
Yes, get that
we'll
on.
do that. Okay, let's pray. Father God, we thank you for this time. God, we thank you for who you are. God, we thank you for allowing us to come out here once again, God, just to continue to do kingdom work, community work, city work. God, we ask that you would just come and be with us in this meeting. Yes. We ask that your Holy Spirit would dwell in this place, that you would allow us to have discussions that will move us forward in what we have to do as a community. Oh, yeah. And Father, we ask that you would just let all communication be on the same level playing field, God, and that the understanding will be there. In your word, you say, get it, and all you're not doing, get an understanding. Oh, yeah. And God, we want an understanding tonight. And so, Father, we ask that you would just touch everybody that's here. Touch the first responders, touch the members, touch the committee, touch everybody. Just bless them in the way that they need to be blessed. Father, also, we want to bless this food, God. If it needs to multiply, let it multiply in Jesus' name. And God, let it be good. Let it taste like steak. In Jesus' name. Father, we just thank you for it. We bless your name in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
All right, good evening to everyone. Good evening. Glad to see everyone come out. We have a lot on the agenda tonight, and I want to say the agenda is full tonight because this is our last meeting of the year. We don't meet in November or December because of the holidays, but we may have to have a special meeting next month because the one main person that's supposed to be here tonight is not here. And that's the guy, the developer with the apartments on Sycamore. He knew about this meeting September 1st, and today he decided to tell me that there was a conflict and he couldn't come. So, like I said, he's been knowing since September 1st. So if we need to meet next month, we'll do it the first couple of weeks. I'll let everybody know when I get back with him. So he's the one that's not here tonight. Is there anyone here from code enforcement? I don't know what's happening with code enforcement. We emailed back and forth, and I don't know. But they're not here. And like always, Officer Cunningham is usually here with the update from the police department, but since we have half of the force here tonight, we invited the new chief out to come out and introduce himself. And since there's so much on the agenda tonight, I am keeping the time on everybody. Let's show them that we have a good meeting here. There's no arguing. There's nothing like that going on. We're not going to interrupt people when they're talking. And we're going to let everybody have their own opinion, and we're just going to move right along. So we're going to go ahead and let the chief introduce himself. Right. And while he's coming up, I just want to say the last 3 chiefs that we have not had a good relationship with them at all. I'm going to just say it, whether the police department likes it or not. They just haven't been here. And we're hoping that with this new chief, that things are going to be different and you will be able to communicate better with us. So we haven't had that with the last 3 chiefs. So we're looking for something different now. So if you want to come up and introduce yourself.
Sure, I'll step up. Another point starting to that, right? Yeah, I think so. Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening. My name is Doug Shoemaker, and I am the new police chief here for the city of Denton. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate the warm welcome and the pizza. Didn't know we were getting fed, but that's fun, so why not, right? I've been in policing for about almost 32 years. So started in Missouri, just so you know a little bit about me. I was in the state capitol in Missouri for 27 years. And then I went to Grand Junction, Colorado. If you don't know where that is, it's on the west side of the state. And I was chief there for about a little over 4 years before I came down here. So I'll just tell you, I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to talking. My background is really pretty deeply entrenched in community policing stuff. Doing a lot of things, especially with one of my favorite things to do was get involved in the community. Did a lot of that in Missouri. Very involved with Boys and Girls Club, United Way, those kinds of things. So I like the outreach. I like talking to people, and I like just getting to know folks and seeing what you're about and kind of what we can do better as a police department. So I can tell you that I knew Chief Dixon before I came down here. We got a great relationship. He's now my boss. He's the assistant manager. So assistant city manager rather. And I'll just tell you, I think we got a lot in front of us, a lot of conversations. And so this won't be the last time you see me here. I'm not in uniform tonight because you got to go through this licensing process thing. So that's why you see me in these clothes. Otherwise, I'd normally be wearing the blues like my fellow coworkers would, or are rather. So. But I'm excited to be here. I don't want a timer, so I don't want to make her mad. But I'll be around, and I look forward to talking with you and seeing what we can do to police and do a good job, a better job, what you expect out of us. But I'm pretty proud to be associated with the women and men that are down here, because I got to tell you, I wouldn't have come to this police department if I thought we were on the wrong path. I just wouldn't have done it. I think we're on a good path, but there's always room for improvement. Personally, I know there's always room for improvement. That's just the way we do. So I just appreciate the opportunity to come down and kind of chat with you a little bit and just say hi. That's really all tonight is, just to meet and greet, say hello, and thanks for letting me in here tonight. This is a nice facility, and looking forward to meeting you. So thanks for your time.
If you don't mind introducing the ones that are here, please.
Oh, sure. Yeah, everybody can actually give Rachel.
She got called out.
Oh, all right. Debbie gets you badges. So if you guys wouldn't mind standing. You're up.
Oh, yep. Frank Peasant, some of you know me, some of you I may be new. I've been with Denton for 27 years now, and currently oversee our detectives and our forensics, our crime investigators, our crime scene investigators. So if you ever call one of our patrol officers and file a report, and then you're like, what happened to it? Call me, I'll find out. Okay?
Hey y'all, I'm Gina Whitson. I know y'all know Tony Cunningham. His office is here in y'all's rec center. He's a community relations officer. I do the same thing. Obviously, he normally handles this side of town a lot more than I do, but I have been to a couple of y'all's meetings in the past, and I try to get here as much as I can. We also have the Citizen Police Academy on Monday night, so normally that would be going on right now. We actually got canceled for weather today, so I was able to show up and say hi to all of y'all today. So if y'all need me, Tony is my partner, so y'all know him already, Officer Cunningham. Like I said, so reach out to him. Let me know if y'all need some support as well from our side of town.
My name is Keith Floyd. I police are assigned to the districts about half of Southeast Denton with my partner who shares the other half right here. So we work nights, so y'all may not see us roam around during the day, but if y'all need anything, reach out to us and we'll get it resolved for y'all.
My introduction is pretty much the same. Joel Weinstein, I work the other half of the district for Southeast Denton night shift. So again, same thing. If you guys have any complaints, concerns, forward them on, I'll take care of it.
I'm Alex Lyles. I've only been in Denton about 5 months. I've been here from Washington State. I'm the daytime portion of this district, so probably more likely to see me. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call.
Councilwoman Byrd here again. Okay. We have Miss Olivia Jeffers who is here, and I will let her give an introduction and what she's doing.
Hi, I'm Olivia Jeffers. I'm running for Justice of the Peace. So if y'all haven't voted already, I know today is only the first day, but it's so important that I just cannot stress enough how important it is to vote. But I digress. A little bit about me. I've been a litigation consultant for the last 20 years, which means that I join trial teams and work with their lawyers and their witnesses from the very beginning of the process, voir dire, all the way to closing arguments. And so I'm very familiar with the courts and very familiar with being in and out of one. But at JP Court, I'm not sure if y'all are unfamiliar with it. Through this whole campaign process, I have figured out that there's a lot of people that just don't even know what a JP Court is. And so it's like the first court that you would come to. So anything under $20,000, you'd see me. Landlord-tenant issues, you would see me. Truancy issues, you would see me. If you want to get married, you get to see me. Which is the best part of my job, right? And I'm willing to, marry anyone and everyone. So, with that being said, there's a lot of things that I want to do for the court, one of which is to bring night court in, because I feel there's a huge amount of our constituents or that have, day jobs that they can't necessarily park from. And so, because they can't park from them, they can't get into court, and so those fines just double and double and double, and so they just find themselves in more financial trouble than they should have from the very get-go. So if we can get night court set up, I think that would be great for everyone, whether that's, bi-weekly or once a week is what I would prefer to do. That's something that is, if I'm elected, I will try my best to get that going. And also, I think a huge part of it is landlord-tenant issues. There's a lot of landlords out there that are great landlords and we just have bad tenants. But on the flip side, we have some really fun landlords and really great tenants. So those, I invite all of those into my courtroom so we could, look at the circumstances and the laws that, apply to those. If you have any questions, I know I've spoken fast, but I don't want to make Colette mad either.
No.
We just gotta back up and just, let her do her thing. But if you have any questions, I'll be here and I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
All right. If there's anything I can do for you, please feel free to give me a call. I've got some business cards. I'll leave them over here. Y'all can grab one. But excited to be working with y'all again.
Since Councilwoman the mayor's not here yet, Randy, are you and Omar doing something, or y'all doing something different?
We're separate.
Okay, go ahead, Randy. I'll turn it over to Randy. Before Randy comes up, I just want everybody to know Randy has done such a good job on helping this group.
Wonderful
The
job.
sign toppers and everything else. I just want to make sure he knows how much we appreciate him.
Yeah.
And we're moving forward to the Quakertown project and renaming of the street for Martin Luther King. We're working on that, so that's gonna be our next project, so.
Yeah, in case you didn't know, there's a street here, there are two streets. It's named after the second most racist president we've ever had. His name was Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah.
Woodrow's out there, Wilson's over here, and they were named that way because the whites, back in 1922, when this area started growing, that was the barrier line. No blacks could live on the other side of those streets. That's why it was named that way. It needs to be renamed. So, real quick, I wanted to start out with just a refresher. We've been working on Quaker and showing where were the people's homes and who lived there and when it was built, when it got moved. And then what we're doing is showing now the focus on our neighborhoods. So what I'm going to be presenting tonight is a tour of Solomon Hill from 1946. That was when all the World War II vets came back. The city hired them on to take a picture of every building that was in Denton. Pictures still exist. And all the tax information still exists to know who lived there and when that house was built and when it got reconstructed. So, this is a quick refresher. That's the location of where Quaker was. This is a little bit closer view. Then in 1922, the city started the process of buying the lots. They really weren't interested in buying the house, so therefore the family could move their house if they could figure out where to move it. And that's where the whole process began. So the fun thing about this one is that this is actually a city map made in 1922 about December, because it shows in that circle area the new roads. Now, let's use the word road loosely. It was a dirt path. The roads were not paved here until mid-1960s. So if you were trying to do something horse and buggy, walking, riding. It was dirt. You know, good luck handling the weather like this now. So at the time, all that area in green was just cow pasture. That was all it was. All they did was kind of plow some roads to say, okay, here's a lot. Come buy a piece of land, move your house here. In that white area, there's an established white community. Imagine what the whites felt about the blacks coming in. They were not real happy, and they let the black residents know that. So one of the results was, see the box at the bottom? Phoenix Park. And what does Phoenix mean to you?
Rise from the ashes.
Coming up from the ashes, rebirth, regeneration of spirits.
Right.
They built that park, and they named that park. So here's the lots as it was platted with the city. And then what we're doing is naming some of the residents in there. In fact, Chelsea was instrumental in helping create a couple of these maps. So I appreciate you doing all that. And that took a lot of time because we had to pull all the records, the real property records, to figure out what was going on. So before we give the tour, it's going to show you when the house was built. I'm using 1930 census data to show you who lived there, and photos were from 1946. So as we begin, it's going to show you the middle section of the street and the street numbers. And if there was nothing there, like at 1011 East Oak, I just named that. So as we get, all of these houses were bought by by white developers. And they were just trying to make a buck. And so now we're getting to where some of the black families that were Quaker moved their house. And this is a picture of St. James AME. St. James AME church building did get moved by that church body. Got moved by another church body. I'll show you a picture of it in a minute. But they built this one new. Probably didn't have enough money to build a new parsonage, so they moved that parsonage to right next door to the church. So you can see in that situation, it was built in 1895, moved in 1922, and that's when the church bought those two lots. So every time that you see something that says built before 1922, just know that that house used to stand at Quaker. So I'm just going to kind of go through it fast. If you know someone's family name, holler at them. So next was a big name in Quaker. So this house over on that side is the recreation of this model here. And the fun thing about it is that it shows you what was the footprint of that house. So you see in the very front of it, but the back of it was built out to accommodate all the family members. And now we're going to switch over to East Hickory. And this is pretty important because it was the Henry family and the Clarks that bought the land along East Hickory Street to move structures that were important to the community. Because, you know, I'm 65 now, but some of the stuff is kind of whoosh. Blacks could not have services held by a white undertaker. You had to have a black undertaker. So this was the building, it was that Quaker got moved. This was the cafe, the store, and it shows Maud Embry bought that. And some of this, Miss Clark helped educate me on it. So, then there's that lodge that's still at the corner, Crawford and East Hickory. That's what it used to look like. It was built new back in the time. But this is another store that was built by the Embreys to accommodate some of the people, like the barbers and the seamstress and that kind of stuff. So, just kind of going along here quick. More houses that the Embreys bought over. You recognize this one on that far side. Have you seen it today? Or have you seen it this year? It's been moved to Carroll Street.
Yeah.
That's the Quakertown house, as it's being called now. But that's the way it was set on the road. That was the appearance of how it was built. It's kind of switched around a little bit now. So this is Walter Clark's house, which is replicated with this one. And then next door to it was Reverend Clark's house. Is that where you first lived? I'm talking with Miss Clark.
Yeah.
So, and then, I don't know if you know Lady Taylor, or that name or not. Then as we go up the street some more, right there at the corner, that was the house that Maud and Ross Embry moved from Quaker. And that's where they lived. And eventually Miss Clark and Reverend Clark moved into that house, right? I don't know. So, then behind that house, they had a 2-story house that they built. And then there was another house that was moved from Quaker. And then the last street to show you is Wood Street. And I'm grateful for Miss Clark because she helped me understand where Wood came from. That was the family name. I didn't know that. And so street names are significant to people that were important to the people of Quaker. So just underscore that in the back of your mind, because as we go to tour more of the streets, these street names are going to come up.
Right.
Like there was one that was a big aha to me, Bushy Street. You know Bushy?
Right.
You know why they got named Bushy? That's where the brick plant was. And you know why the brick plant was important? Because the very first courthouse that was ever built in the middle of the square, the county commissioner said, has to be made out of brick. And we're tired of our county courthouse being burnt down. So there was no brick. The brick was made here. So let's see. Kind of go through this. So Henry Taylor house and Mary Ellen Taylor. Remember her name? Because she sat in her house when it was being moved.
Right.
And you know how they moved it, right?
Yeah. Tell
Mules. And logs were underneath there. That's the rollers. So when one log came out, people had to pick that log up, put it around the front, and get it back under there. And she was making sure her house didn't get destroyed. She sat in her house while it got moved.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody's talking about St. James A.M.E.
Yeah.
Well, Reverend Clark was doing, sorry. You were getting some stuff happening with the churches around here. And we were looking at the, Dr. Reverend Logan.
Five historical churches?
Yeah.
Yes.
And in one of those histories that we found, it was Pleasant Grove Baptist that took St. James A.M.E. Church down and moved it. That's St. James AME Church. So, the other thing that's important is remembering the people who lived here.
Right.
And so, looking at the census data, that's where all these names come from. So you see the kids out there on the front porch, maybe start thinking, who are they?
Who are they? Yeah.
Wow, that's who they were. So, Will Hill, y'all know his name?
Oh, yeah.
So Will Hill was the only one that had enough gumption to sue the city.
Right.
KKK came after him and he dropped the lawsuit.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
he built his house here, and he built another one next door to it for the rest of his family. So, I think we're about the end, and so that's a visual tour just for Solomon Hill. Next time we'll do one for New Quaker.
All right.
Appreciate
I'm just gonna
it.
pass these around.
Hours and hours of work. Thank you.
Mayor, do you have any? Can I see the mayor come in? What do you have? You have the floor.
Good evening. Good evening. Sorry, but I want to tell you, I'm gonna dive right in. My first call tomorrow is gonna be to follow up with Amy Bassett and figure out, because they just canceled today? Right, yeah, I talked to them 2 weeks ago, and my understanding was gonna be here, right? So that rubs me the wrong way.
He said he had a conflict and he couldn't get here at 7:15.
Right, yeah, no, I understand. She offices in town, and she knows enough to where she could have been here, in my estimation, right? I'll ask some questions, so I'll follow back up with that. But happy to take notes. I don't have anything specific to present. Hey Chief, how you doing? Good to see you. We continue to do really good things. We have one more layer of asphalt to go for Hill Alley and for that stretch of more, so we'll get that done as soon as it dries out. I'm assuming we'll be done there. If you have any feedback on how that process has went, please let us know, because they're going to be doing the same thing throughout the neighborhood. So if there's issues there, I did report, if you got any of the notices about the street repair or the water being turned off, and they were kind of handwritten and some stuff scratched out, the city manager's working on that so that we can get it looking right, get the right information. I got a couple of those where the dates are wrong. So we're just trying to make sure it's from the city and doesn't look like someone just scribbled something, so we're aware and we know what's real, what's fake. So we're working on that, make sure we get that right. Anything else? I'll take questions. Yes, sir.
No, what am I saying, man? Not only pass on to the city, the people that were working on the asphalt, especially on Morris Street and also on Robinson, you just pass on to those employees how courteous they were as you passed by.
Okay.
And how they were trying to direct the traffic on both sides. And sometimes it would only be one lane, but at least they were trying to make it where you could at least get by.
Right.
And after a while, you do kind of go around. But the ones that were there, especially on Morris Street, everybody came by, they're very courteous, very nice, and trying to keep things going. So they need to hear about that.
Good. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I will. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I'll ask anybody, but I'll ask you all. But you talking about Mark Street, that the corner there, do you have any idea what they're gonna build there, or are they just clearing it off? The corner of Lakey, or I guess that'd be Duncan and Morris Street.
When they cleared all those trees?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure what they're doing there. I hadn't seen anything else, but I did call initially, they can do it by right, which bummed me out a little bit, but I don't know. I hadn't seen any plans for that. Good question. Anyone else, anything I can help with or take note of? Yes, ma'am.
What are they putting down here across from where, Humphrey Shelter is, or, right there where the dog pound used to be?
That's those apartments.
Across the other side, behind the, yeah.
Yeah,
On the west side, on the opposite side, that's those apartments. Yeah, yeah, that's what they're starting. And then just so you know, once we start the new shelter, we'll schedule open towards the end of the year. You can go now and schedule tours. You reach out to them and you can schedule tours to go see the building. But it'll open end of the year. Then the county's gonna buy that where Monsignor King is now. That's gonna be torn down and they'll make trails and some 4-H areas or something like that. So they're gonna tear that down, they'll buy that, tear it down, renovate that area, just so you know. So that'll probably start at some point after the new year, I assume. So, but yeah, you can schedule tours to go see the new building they're constructing now. That tour's in the paper, and you can see email and get that new one.
Okay, right there on Mayhew?
Yes. No, the one.
I know what that one is.
Yes.
I'm talking about down there on Mayhew and Spencer. They're clearing out a lot of area over there for what, apartments?
Mayhill, Spencer. Let me get there.
Right, like going towards the railroad track. Mayhew.
Yep.
Spencer. You keep on going, they cleared out an area over there and they get ready to put something over there. They have some apartments up over there already, but I'm just thinking they get ready to put some more apartments up over there.
Yeah, I'll have to get oriented on that. Let me look it up.
It's on Mayhew.
Yeah, I'll look it up and see. Anyone else? Okay, very good. Thank y'all very much. Thank you. Yes.
Councilwoman Byrd.
Well, I tell you what, my daughter, I'm a paw mom. I don't have my own grandkids, but I do have a grandpup. And today was his day to go and get his shots or whatever. So, you know, and then I came home and my husband had already cooked, so I took the shoes off and ate dinner, and I thought, wait a minute, what day is that? Anyway, I always feel like I have to explain. Well, how is everyone today? I am good. I sure missed you all the last time I missed because of something going on at home. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you all today about the Quakertown Centennial Memorial Project. And that is something that is absolutely going to happen. I'm very excited about this huge project. I want it to be a really, really big deal. I want it to be something that is like a destination type situation. You know, people go around the country looking for historical things to, you know, that's intriguing to them. I want them to stop by then to find out about this particular story. Of course, I'm not sure if everybody in the room knows about the story, but I know that this is something that myself and Mr. Hunt and some Mr. Logan and some great other people have been working on to make this happen. So this is what the City of Denton has written to us. It says the Denton Parks and Recreation Department, in conjunction with multiple city departments and community members with relevant insight and expertise, are joining together to honor the community of Quakertown, including its history, legacy, residents, and their descendants. Staff are planning several engagement opportunities for feedback and input from the public to determine the final content and design for temporary signage honoring it didn't say temporary signage, but signage honoring the 100th anniversary of Quakertown. The first of these public meetings is going to be informative presentation at the October 24th Southeast Denton Neighborhood Association meeting. Did that already happen? Or did I? Okay. And the Centennial Memorial Project also overlaps current efforts that we're going to create a permanent memorial at Quakertown Park. The permanent memorial will be developed in coordination with both Quakertown Park Master Plan, Downtown Denton Area Master Plan. Joint planning involves high levels of public input, engagement, and to ensure the final project aligns with resident desires and honors the history and significance of the Quakertown staff. And so there's a gentleman that is heading this up by the name of Omar Siddiqui. Siddiqui? Yes. Siddiqui. So he's here. And so I'm very excited about that particular thing that's happening. So I want to be around as it's going on, but I may not be. But if I'm not, then that's great as well, as long as we get to the final destination. So that's what we're gonna do. Let me see. There were some other things on here that I thought that was pretty interesting. So I know that we have, I don't know, it just seems like there's just an overabundance of homelessness going on here in this city. It's just part of growing up. We have to accept all the luxury. We have an overabundance of luxury coming in here as well, things that we can't afford. And then there's a homelessness. So you got a whole varied spectrum of folks that we who've been around here a long time are now having to embrace. We have to embrace the luxury as well as the homeless situation. I can tell you that the city of Denton is working very hard. I'm not sure if the mayor has gone over this or not, but working very hard to figure out something. Along with the nonprofit groups, there's several nonprofit groups in the city all working together to try to figure out this whole homeless situation. The luxury folks, they're doing fine, as long as we can keep up with what they need, because they also need housing as well. Don't want to leave anybody out. So just please rest assured that I am, in on some of those conversations about the homeless. I work with the United Way folks to find out what's going on, and I believe the mayor had already said that we're getting ready to open up that. It's not called a shelter.
Yes, that's right.
Shelter?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I thought maybe it'd be another fancy term for it to, make sure everybody's feeling good about it. But I know that there's some, that's coming along. So we'll see. Let's see how that works out for us. And I'll be the first voice to speak up if necessary. So you all continue to email me and call me and let me know what it is that you need from me. I'm gonna stand down. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, Colette, I haven't. So I have an answer. I think that's, if you're driving towards the 35 on the right-hand side, we're working on a bridge. We bought that property, and there's gonna be a bridge to get rid of that four-way stop that everyone avoids because it backs up so bad. So they may have started work over there. I hadn't driven it yet. Yeah, they're building a bridge there. And then for anybody that is interested to know anybody, I think it's 16 and up, but I'll double check that. The Salvation Army is hiring bell ringers at $11 an hour. So you just stand out there and ring bells. So that's starting.
Okay, we have Omar here from Parks and Recreation is here with him. He has a presentation. After him, I believe in the last is Planning Department, and y'all will have it in. Is anybody hungry or thirsty right now?
Yeah.
Let them know. Let them know.
I'm about to start.
They'll bring it to you. Just let them know.
You got one thing to it. Walk in front of you, Greg. Is it okay?
Peace and chicken wings, and don't love that.
Hi everyone. My name is Omar Siddiqui. I'm with the Parks and Recreation Department. I've got a couple of the park staffers with me, Kellen Seward, our business manager, and Kinsey Espinoza, our assistant director.
Pleasure to be here.
So today we're going to talk about sort of what Councilmember Byrd introduced, the Quakertown Memorialization Project. So there's actually like three pieces to this that we can kind of break down and talk about separately. The first is, as Councilmember Byrd suggested, we want to do a really robust schedule of public events to commemorate what is essentially the centennial moment of Quakertown, as all the t-shirts show us. The Quakertown community the removal of the community began after the park board vote in 1921, and by 1923, the community was largely removed from Quakertown Park. So it's hard to pin down a specific centennial date, but we can appreciate the centennial moment, and that's what we want to do with a really robust, really fantastic series of public events, arts events, music events, that sort of thing, to sort of really make Quakertown known regionally and throughout Texas. The second piece of this is part of that centennial program, which is it's a temporary memorial project within the park. And the scope of that, and the scope of the public event piece, and the scope of the third piece, which is the permanent memorial, will all depend on the public input we get from you and other community members. So the second piece I was talking about is going to be a temporary memorial, sort of move quickly and capture this centennial moment so we don't miss out on commemorating this very significant moment in Denton history that we're inhabiting right now. And then the third piece is this longer-term permanent memorial in Quakertown Park that will need a great deal of public input and will need to be incorporated into a master planning effort for the park, because the park is still going to be function as sort of a day-to-day park. So you want to keep that functionality while also having a very robust memorial to Quakertown. So that's sort of the three pieces that we're going to talk about really quickly today. All right, table of contents, kind of already went through this. Permanent memorial options we'll talk about, temporary memorial options, and then at the end of the presentation I have a series of images for us to sort of consider and for you to sort of think about while you're thinking about what you want the shape of these things to look like ultimately. So as a background, on April 19th, Councilmember Byrd requested a work session conversation to sort of go over these things. This presentation is largely what we talked about at the work session. So you're getting to see what council saw. So what we talked to council about as we began this presentation is we asked them to sort of keep in mind two sort of signal concerns. The first is to keep in mind that this is just the beginning of a very long process that will involve a great deal of public input and will need to be shaped by that public input. And the second thing to keep in mind is while we're considering what shape the memorial, the final memorial in particular, will take, we need to be attentive to sort of the maintenance needs and the functional needs of the park that will maintain even while it houses a very good memorial to Quakertown. So what that means is we need to consider sort of the day-to-day and sort of mundane questions about maintenance. What do you do if you need to put in some new piping for sprinklers? How do you make sure that kind of day-to-day maintenance doesn't impinge on the memorial or require the kind of interventions into the memorial that would cause problems down the road? All right. So in Denton we have some existing and planned memorials. As you can see, the markers, this one down in the corner is the old, actually I think I know. Oh yeah, old laser. Okay, this one is the old sign at Quakertown. I think it was, you can't believe the date, but I think it's 1991. And then up here is the Quakertown house that's on Carroll, that we just talked about. And this is that marker that is associated with that. This is the newer Quakertown marker that, gets things a little bit better, but could maybe still be improved. This is the lovely brick mural in the Civic Center that is sort of structured on a bunch of really great archival images, and it tells the story of residents in Quakertown. And then TWU is planning a very large and very extensive memorial on property that used to be part of their golf course. And that is going to be a two-phase program, which in the first phase will have a memorial structure with, I think, an amphitheater and like an educational plaza that is going to cost around $2.5 million. I think that's their price tag. And then they're going to have a second phase, which will be about the same, and that will involve a kind of forested area where you'll be able to walk through and appreciate the story of Quakertown. And I think they're thinking of having some augmented reality with that, which means you can use your phone and it'll kind of like show you various information you can sort of pop up on your camera. So it's a very involved process. They're clearly investing the kind of money that the city probably just doesn't have to invest. But that's going on simultaneously. So when we think about what we want to do at the park, we want to sort of build on what they're doing and not necessarily just replicate it. Sort of to make the overall program of memorialization in Denton sort of meaningful in a cohesive sense. So permanent memorial options, we were asked by the council to consider a proposal by Mr. Hunt, particularly about installing a series of parallel sidewalks in Quakertown Park that would essentially exist on Terry Avenue. So they would sort of place on the existing park the historic presence of Quakertown in a very sort of impactful way. And then we were asked to consider sort of memorial markers, renaming of the Dead Women's Building, and potential of building a sculpture garden or a healing garden as kind of a memorial as well. So the issue that we had as parks with the Terry Avenue Memorial was not that it wasn't a good idea or that it would have been a very powerful and impactful memorial, which we do, and we agree that the idea was powerful in that way. We just didn't see how we could work with, first of all, the existing structures at the park and the need to sort of keep the park as a functional park with these kind of day-to-day maintenance needs in mind that I spoke about earlier. So if you can see, here is, these orange lines here are, roughly speaking, either side of Terry Avenue. And here's Terry Avenue on the Sanborn map. There's Withers at the top, which is the northern border of Quakertown. And down here is, I think, Holt, if I'm not mistaken, which doesn't exist anymore. And here's Oakland, just to orient you. But so the issue with this is to have this in place, we would have had to reconcile in some way with existing structure. This is the amphitheater at the park, and this is the existing senior center. And the other issue is, along the way, there are sort of paths that go through already, and perhaps more significantly, there are several trees that would have had to have been either moved or worked around in some way. So ultimately, we found that this plan, while it was very thoughtful and impactful, and it would have sort of impressed, that it would have sort of placed the physicality of Quakertown on Quakertown Park as it is now in a really powerful way. We felt that it was ultimately not a productive avenue. We thought it was not going to work out in the long term in a way that we want a permanent memorial to work. Meaning we want the permanent memorial not to have to be worked around with maintenance needs or messed with. We wanted to sort of have its cohesiveness without having that kind of interference with the day-to-day working of the park. So the idea of placing memorial markers within the sidewalk is something that would be workable if we didn't have the previous problem with the sidewalks interfering with the structures that already exist. There are some concerns with this type of memorialization, namely that you may need to move them again if you have to do irrigation work, if you have to put pipes down for sprinklers and that sort of thing. If you have various other kind of construction projects going on, you might need to move them. The other issue we have, which is sort of an issue that may be a concern with all of these memorial options, is the worry about vandalism, which I don't think is one that we personally should prevent us from doing things. We'll just have to find a way to keep things in good repair. The other issue is one of aesthetics, where we'd like to hear the public's input on this about how people think a park would look like with a bunch of brass plaques in it. The worry we had in mind was that it might look a little bit like a graveyard, whereas we might want the memorial for Quakertown to feel more like a vibrant and living memorial. So that's just something to sort of think about as you go down the road and as you individually think about what you want this to look like. Right, another piece of a possible memorial, or part of the memorial project generally, was to change the name of the Denton Women's Building. And we had conversations with representatives from the Denton Women's Club, and the city manager and assistant city manager will be meeting with them again in November. When I spoke to them, they weren't terribly open to the idea of renaming the building. And, the way things stand with this is the city owns the land, the Women's Club owns the building. So that sets up an interesting dynamic. The other thing is, the gesture to rename the building, to my mind, is something that should probably come from the Women's Club as sort of a gesture of, kindness and sort of healing. And so it's not something that the city can impose on them. So I think if it wasn't in position, it would be, it wouldn't be the same. But anyway, these are continuing conversations. The Women's Club hasn't said, they didn't say categorically that they were against the idea. They said that at this moment they don't see it passing muster with the rest of their membership. They were open to the idea of doing an external memorial to the building, and so that's sort of where we stand with this. We'll have to see what happens in November after more conversations occur. And I'm hopeful that we can sort of get some movement on this, but it will just probably take some time. So this is these are a few images of what a healing garden might look like. And we have a couple options for where we could place this. Henry Taylor's lot, like Randy mentioned earlier, is in Quakertown. He was known as a fantastic gardener. He grew white lilacs, which apparently are pretty much impossible to grow in this climate. So he was something of a horticultural wonder. And we could place a garden on his lot and in that vicinity that would perhaps include some sort of white lilac art piece, mostly because it's like really, really hard to grow white lilacs. So we have to have fake ones. But anyway, that's an option. And the idea of the healing garden more generally is that it allows for a space for sort of contemplation and thoughtfulness. Often you'll see, like you have here, the gardens like this have sort of meandering paths and little labyrinths and sitting places. And the idea is that you can go there, you can sort of think about the history at the same time, you can include signage, and it's just a place to sort of think and sort of meditate on history and on where we are, where we've been, and hopefully where we're going. And within this, we can also include, like a small area for what they call like an outdoor classroom, which would be basically like a mini amphitheater, where you could have educational programs and that sort of thing. Down here at the bottom is actually the Councilor Memorial to Greenwood. So that sort of gives you a similar kind of feeling. They've got a large memorial to Greenwood, and then they've got this sort of like meandering labyrinthine path around it. And this image here is actually at Quakertown Park currently, and it's the garden between City Hall and Senior Center, I think. Civic Center, thank you. So this is another option that we can expand this, make it much larger, and have it include these sort of healing garden features and a memorial feature. The citizens tell us that's what they want to do. All right, so temporary memorial options are again to capture this centennial moment that we're in and make sure that we do something now to memorialize this very important historical moment. And the options for this are temporary signage and Quakertown outlining, and then that sort of series of events that we talked about. So one project we had in mind was to sort of temporarily mark the lots of Quakertown on the existing grounds of Quakertown Park with athletic paint or signage or something that makes sense. The issue with the sort of drawing out the lots is similar to the issue that you have with the sidewalks in that there are buildings that are already there. So for those structures, we have to find a way to reconcile what is there already with what we want to memorialize. Maybe that means putting a sign on a building saying these properties were here where this building stood, or making some sort of accommodation like that. But the idea here is you would have at the park the location of every home and every business so that people who are descendants of Quakertown and just the general public can come and appreciate where they are exactly in historical Quakertown. So families could come and bring, just enjoy being where their ancestors were from and sort of appreciate that. And that would sort of help identify the exact locations of these houses and businesses. And just to give you an idea of how much would be involved, how many of these landmarks we have, there's approximately about 80 identifiable structures that were in Quakertown that became Quakertown Park. Okay. All right. Moving quickly. So explanatory signage, kind of self-explanatory signage. It would be temporary signage that would be large enough to sort of tell the story of Quakertown Park and include images of the churches and of just various historical moments from Quakertown's history. These are relatively inexpensive to put up. You can put them up pretty quickly. There is a possibility that they could be damaged, but again, because they're very inexpensive, they can be put back on. So, and I have, okay, here are just a few. I had one of our graphics designers come up with a mock-up. If you can kind of sort of ignore the bottom imagery here, we would sort of, they're sort of placeholders in the sense that we'd probably get better images of the actual churches. These are what the signs could look like, you know, if the public likes what these look like. It has a little bit of explanatory text. It's hard to read here. I'll email this out separately. And it has each of the churches' names. And I asked her to identify on the Sanborn map where they're located. So, and what we might do with this is do sort of an overlay map. I just wonder if that, you know, the overlay might become difficult to read. Of course, what we would do is we would have these located at the actual locations of the church. So that would help. So you know the sign is where the church used to be. All right. So in terms of Remember's events, I think this is a really exciting opportunity to sort of do a lot of really cool things to memorialize Quakertown and also to do what Denton does best, which is arts and culture and music. And what we had in mind for this was several sort of interrelated events that could occur on significant days, such as MLK Day, Juneteenth, or separately scheduled if you don't want to interfere with the existing scheduled events. And that can include things like a speaker series, a Day of Remembrance, arts events, like an art show by Quakertown descendants or individuals who want to do Quakertown-inspired art. We can also do musical events. I think a Quakertown Fest would be fantastic, instead of Correct Spirit. Youth-focused educational events would be critically important, I think. And then a gathering day for the congregations to sort of meet and perhaps pray and hold sort of like a spiritual fellowship at the locations where the churches used to be. I think that's critically important. And then at the end, I just put it's a question of scheduling. We'll have to figure out when and where, when people want these events to happen. All right. So these are the recommendations we made to council, which were to consider basically a permanent memorial as part of the involved master planning effort. That would be cohesive so that whatever is finally built will be permanent in a very real sense and properly situated within a park that will still exist as a park. And finally, to consider options for more immediate temporary memorial gestures. And they informed us to sort of consider building these temporary signs that we are moving on. We should have up hopefully very soon. And then sort of build committees of staff and the public that could sort of help us to do these schedules of public events. So next steps, we're building a database of Quakertown descendants because to our mind, they are one of the critical constituencies that we need to contact and make sure that what we do here works for them. And then we're here tonight to receive their input. And we're developing the temporary signage and we're working on a prospective calendar of events to bring before you and to gain your, to receive your input about. And then finally, we're going to develop a committee to work on the master planning effort on a permanent work. Okay, and finally, I just had some pictures for you guys to consider really quickly. These are just some examples of temporary signage. This is what they did at what's called Seneca Village in New York City. It was a settlement of enslaved or formerly enslaved individuals on Central Park. So that's kind of gives you an idea of the physicality. This is probably about, if I had to guess, like 4 feet by maybe 2 feet, or maybe more. And these are other options for signage. You can kind of see sort of angled, low enough that if someone's on a wheelchair, they can come up to it and read it fine, and not have an issue with that. And then this is actually from, I think, an Arboretum. But I just wanted to show you that we have options to do signage with QR codes that can help you bring up even more information on your phone when you scan it. Here are some options, again, for like memorial gardens. This sort of gives you the sense that it doesn't necessarily have to be, you can do a lot with a well-considered space even when it's not very big. This is, again, the kind of viewing garden with, a wandering path. Again, same similar thing, just from the layout. This is Memorial in Las Vegas, and this is in Missouri. This gives you an idea of Memorial Gardens. This is at the University of Virginia, and this is beautiful, I think a beautiful memorial in honor of the enslaved labor that built the university. So it's kind of elegant, but still sort of puts people in that history. And here, because as I mentioned, Olivia's, I was trying to look for sculptures of flowers for these presentations. These are poppies from I think it's a memorial in the UK. So this kind of gives you an idea of what we could do if you want to do a floral art piece in honor of Henry Taylor. This is just, I think the last one, just a memorial that includes text. And so, during the day it looks a little like a rusted tin can. That's kind of a downer. But at night it looks really beautiful. And I was thinking, if you had names of individuals who lived at Quaker inscribed in this manner, it would be a really nice memorial at night anyway. During the day, maybe if they did this in a silver, right, better. Outdoor singing places or outdoor classrooms. This is what it would kind of look like. And then, this is just the last image. If you have any questions, I just chose this because this, to me, it seemed like kind of what you might want in a place to encourage kind of thoughtfulness, just an abstract sculpture, but to kind of just sit and meditate. But anyway, that's sort of what we have in mind for Quakertown. We're basically at the start of a process that is going to receive a lot of public input and will need a lot of public input. And the ultimate shape of it will be determined by what you and the collective citizens of Denton decide to do.
All right.
Sorry for running over time.
No, not worried, Omar. Thank you, Omar.
Okay, last but not least, planning and zoning here.
I'm sorry, I have a question. Before you, Omar, what's the next meeting for the next public gathering engagement?
Well, you haven't started, we haven't developed the schedule of those yet, but once I have those, we'll be publicizing it a lot.
Thank you.
And then make sure I have your name and phone number, and then I can let people know also.
Okay. Hi, I'm Julie Wyatt. I'm a senior planner with the City of Denton. And we talked to your group, I think it was in July, about small area planning. At that time, there was a discussion about just, what are some basics about zoning and the development process within Denton. And so we told you we would come back to talk about that. So here we are tonight to talk about that. It's not the most exciting topic, but I'm going to try to keep it a little bit lively. I don't have a clicker, so stand over here. No, I'm okay. All right. Our agenda, we're going to talk introductions just really briefly. We're just going to talk about some zoning basics and then that development in depth. Introductions, we have in the audience tonight Tina Firgens. She is our Assistant Director of Development Services as well as our Planning Director. You may remember her from July. We also have Ron Nikita. He is a Principal Planner and he's famous in Denton. I think everybody knows him. Haley Zagurski could not be here tonight. She's our Assistant Director of Planning. And then Mia Hines is another team member that couldn't be here tonight. Mia and I are going to be working together on a small area plan for the Southeast Denton area. That's going to be kicking off soon, so you'll probably be seeing this a lot, and we'll be available for you. So first of all, what is zoning? It was invented in New York City in 1916. This building right here, it was the Equitable Life Building. That is what kicked it all off. Zoning came about because there were concerns that they caused too much shadow on the sidewalks. And so New York City enacted regulations to regulate height, use, and lot coverage to limit or to preserve light, air, and limit congestion to keep the shadows off the sidewalks. So in subsequent years, zoning spread throughout the nation, and eventually it came to Denton. So what is zoning? Zoning divides the city into different areas. They're set aside for different purposes. So with that 1916 building in New York City and with subsequent zoning, people realized maybe we shouldn't put things like factories next to houses or elementary schools, that maybe there are some uses that should be separated. And so that was really what that intent was for zoning. So today, zoning can tell you what a property can do on a site, and that is the use, and then how much they can do it. So what size of a building, what setbacks, how tall it can be, how much of the lot it can take up. The regulations in the zoning code should reflect the values and goals of the community identified in the comprehensive plan. So Denton has a comprehensive plan, Denton 2040 plan. It was adopted earlier this year. When was it adopted? When was it? April of this year. So we had an update to our comprehensive plan in April. And then area plans. So we've got area plans that are coming forth in Southeast Denton and also in other parts of our community. So our zoning should reflect those plans. It's a balance. It's a balance between those private property rights, so what an owner of a lot can do on their lot, and then that public interest. And sometimes those things can be in tension, so we do have to work through those issues. And then state law, the state of Texas kind of tells us what we can and can't do with our zoning. And it states that we can have zoning, but those zoning districts should be standardized. So the uses and development standards within a general office district in the west side of town has to be the same uses and development standards in the east side of town. So they have to be the same throughout the community. So we have had zoning in Denton for a while. I think we actually had zoning a little earlier than 1941, but I'm not exactly sure. But one of our earliest zoning maps is on your left there. We had 3 districts in Denton. We had a business district, we had a manufacturing district, and then we had a residential district. So that was our 1941 zoning map. It then went to that 1957 zoning map, similar 3 districts, business, manufacturing, and dwelling. It got more complicated as the century went on. We have our 1969 zoning map here on the right, and then at the bottom, that is our 1991 zoning map. And then the 2002 zoning map with all of the colors is on the left. We adopted a comprehensive plan and a totally new code in 2002. We had a lot of colors on the map and a lot of zoning districts that got pretty complicated. But in 2019, we adopted a new code. We updated that 2002 code to try to simplify it, make it a little cleaner, clean up our zoning districts, and update our regulations. So in 2019, we adopted the 2019 Development Code, and that included all new zoning districts and then development standards and use tables. So any zoning regulation has 2 parts to it. It has a map, and that's that area with all the colors on it, and then it has a text. So the map and the text correspond with each other. The map tells you, it labels the different colors as districts. So this is the Southeast Denton area. We've got R4 for a large part of it. That is one of our low-density residential districts. We've got R3. As you get toward downtown, you get the purple color. That's our mixed-use downtown and mixed-use neighborhood districts. So those are the rules of the road in Denton in terms of development. So those are the rules, and then now we're going to talk about development and what happens within the planning department. So when a property owner calls us, they're either maybe looking to purchase a piece of property or they have a piece of property and they call us and say, well, what can we do? So the planner, whoever answers the phone, looks on the map, looks at the color on the map, and then pulls up our Denton Development Code, this book right here that we all carry around, to figure out what they can actually do on the property. And remember, our zoning tells us what you can do, so what the use is, and then how much, so that size. So we look at the use regulations in our code, and that is in subchapter 5. If you're curious, you want to look it up. And we have this chart here. So the top, those are the zoning districts. We have our residential districts going all the way from rural residential to our R7, which is kind of more of our light mixed use, urban, has a lot of residential uses, mixed density, but a little bit of office. So that's those are our residential districts. We have mixed use districts. We have our corridor districts, and then we have our other districts, like our industrial districts or our public facilities districts. So if a property owner called us and said, hey, I have a lot, and it has R4, what can I do? We look it up, and see if I can point to it right here. Here's R4 right here. We'll say, well, if it doesn't have anything in the square, then you can't do that use. So we'll look at the row, and so, for example, multifamily is not permitted in R4. There's nothing in that square. But we'll look around and say, well, okay, townhomes and duplexes are permitted as long as you get approval of a specific use permit, and we're going to talk about that more in just a minute. But if you wanted to put a single-family home on an R4 district, you could do that by right. The mayor said by right earlier. I heard you say it, and by right is what that means is it's permitted, and they wouldn't have to go through any other public hearing or ask for any additional permissions to change that zoning. That use would be allowed. So those are our three options. It's either it's not permitted. We might have to get a specific use permit, which we'll talk about, and then it would be permitted by right. So a specific use permit. Those uses that are allowed by a specific use permit, and if you hear the letters SUP thrown about, that's what that means. And what that says is that use is probably okay in that zoning district. That use is fine, but it may not be fine in every location. So what we have to look at is what are those impacts associated with that use, and if it's compatible with the surrounding area. It's really, that's the whole ball of wax when you're talking about an SUP. Is use may be permitted, but we want to see how it's affecting the surrounding area. And I think we talked earlier about this project right here. This went before the city council earlier this year as a specific use permit. It was for a multifamily project on Woodrow and where Duchess will eventually tie into Woodrow. And that went through that SUP process. We looked at how those buildings were sited. We looked at the landscaping they were proposing, where they were taking access to make sure that it was compatible within that general area. Often an SUP requires a site plan and a landscape plan to be tied to it. It is approved by council through the dual public hearing process. And when it gets approved, when that use gets approved, they have to develop as they say they're going to develop. That they can't show one site plan and then develop something else. They need to develop it as they said they were going to. So we talked about our base zoning districts. We have our residential districts, we have our mixed-use districts, our corridor districts, and we have a menu of uses that are permitted in each of those districts. Sometimes there are developments that just don't fit. They don't fit in maybe our current base zoning, or they have some sort of unified plan, some sort of master plan that they want to propose to the city. And in those instances, they come in with a plan development. And what that is, that's a zoning action. So it is something that we're going to tie development standards, permitted uses, and a development map to that approval. And it's approved through the dual public hearing process. It goes to PNC and council. And it ties that development plan to that property. So that development of that site has to conform to what they said they were going to do. If they don't want to do the plan that they got approved, then they have to come back for a rezoning. So it is essentially specific zoning for a specific spot. Does that make sense? Any questions so far? All right, so somebody's called us and they have a piece of property and they want to develop it. So what do they do next? Well, we have a development process within the city of Denton, and it's pretty lengthy. They first start out with a pre-application. What that is they come to the city with a piece of paper or a concept plan and say, this is my dream, this is what I want to do. How do I do that? And that's when they get to know the city, they talk to us about what they want to do, we talk to them about what the regulations are. And it's not only planning, they also talk to engineering, they talk to fire, they talk to building inspections, they talk to parks. They talk to all of those departments to see what regulations would apply to their project. So that's their first step. Their second step is a maybe. That is a public hearing. And if what they want to do, if they've got R4 zoning, but they want to do multifamily, they would have to ask permission through the rezoning process. So they would have to go through that dual public hearing process. And so that's a discretionary item, and we're going to talk a little bit about that on the next slide. But if the zoning does not permit their use, that would be a developer's first step with any development. And that is a discretionary item. And we'll talk about that more as well. The next is a zoning compliance plan. Say either they've gotten their zoning approved or the use is permitted on their property, they would then go for a zoning compliance plan. It's just a fancy word for site plan. And what it is, it's staff is looking at the lot boundaries, where the easements are going to need to go, and are there any conflicts with where their buildings are going to go, where they want to put their parking. Would they meet the parking requirements? Is there enough room to plant the street trees they're supposed to plant? Or where is their access going to come from? And does that meet all of our regulations? So they usually provide that site plan, that is the property boundaries with where their building's going to go, where their driveways are going to be, and where their parking is going to be. And we compare that to all of the development standards to see if it meets the requirements. That's approved administratively if it meets it. If it doesn't, they have to keep trying until they get it right. The next step is the preliminary plat. And then civil plan review, those are those engineering items. Those are really important. That's the water, the sewer, the drainage, the roads. Those can be really expensive items for developers. And then final plat. A plat, who here knows what a plat is? So what it is, it's a drawing of a property or a lot. It defines the lot boundaries. It establishes, maybe if it's for a subdivision, it would establish where the streets go, any easements. So it is that drawing of the property. It is reviewed by the city. It is approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have a few commissioners here. And then it is the final plat is filed of record. So it actually then establishes if your house says lot 1, block 2 of the Smith edition, that is that location on the plat of your lot. After the property's platted, they would then go for building permits, construction, and then ultimately a certificate of occupancy.
When does the city council give the approval, and why do people come to city council and say they don't want this and they don't want that, they don't want this? When does all of that happen?
That is a great question. That was actually perfectly timed. So right now, we're going to skip back. We've gone through all of these, but we're going to go back to this public hearing because that's really where some discretion comes in. So through that whole long process, there are decision points for plat approval, decision points for administrative approval. And there are two kind of big decision types within any development process. One is discretionary and one is ministerial. And you can forget those words after tonight. So discretionary, that would be a rezoning, it would be a planned development, it would be a specific use permit. That's where the city, a property owner has a piece of property, the zoning does not fit what they want to do, and they come to the city and say, well, can I please rezone my property? The city looks at what they're proposing, we look to see if it conforms to the comprehensive plan, the future land use map, which is a comprehensive plan. We look to see if it meets any small area plan goals. We have criteria for approval, and we analyze their request and make a recommendation. We make a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission after public notification. Ultimately, it goes up to city council for approval or denial. But that's where then we get city council involved. Public notification is required for all rezoning applications. The city of Denton actually goes above and beyond what the state requires. The state only requires that we put an ad in the newspaper and that we send to property owners within 200 feet of the request. City of Denton goes above that. We also send postcards to property or to residents within 500 feet of the request. And we have the applicant place signs on the property, alerting the neighbors to that. And then we also post it on our website. So we try to have as many avenues for that public outreach as possible. So when somebody wants to come in and rezone, they submit it to us. We send out that public notification. We make a recommendation. It goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They hear the case. The applicant pleads their case. We talk about those land use issues associated with it. They make a recommendation, and then ultimately it goes to City Council. Those are public hearings. You are, of course, you're welcome at any Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council meeting. Those are the ones that often members of the community talk to the City Council, give their feedback associated with any request. So that's that discretionary. We also have ministerial decision points, and those are things like the plats. So those are something that there isn't really any discretion that the city has, because that is a technical document. So if it meets all of our technical standards, if the lot boundaries meet the zoning, if it's got adequate water and sewer to it, and there's a roadway to get to it, then we don't really have that freedom of choice to approve or deny. It is something that we have to approve per the state law. So zoning is discretion, but platting is that ministerial. There's not any discretion for that.
But you have to okay it through a survey, don't you, on the plat? You just don't go let somebody draw the line and say, this is my land. They gotta come up here and get a survey that they pay for, so they can verify that they do own that property.
You are absolutely correct. Yes, they have to hire a surveyor to draw that. Yeah. They submit it to the city, and we review it with a fine-tooth comb. Okay. And so you're absolutely correct. You just can't go and plat a piece of property. It has to be reviewed and approved.
I don't want a big farm in that case.
Are there any questions about this?
I just wanted to explain to them. I'm going to use the old Trinity steel as an example. When you go out 200 feet, and then you go out 500 feet, what if 80% of that is businesses and a graveyard? How does that affect, you only just could do the residential, you have 80% who could probably consider that.
Well, it is 80% or 20% of the land area. That's a good question. Let me back up just a minute. So Commissioner McDade brought up a really good point. There is a public outreach component with a zoning case, and that has to do with that public notification. So we do send out letters to property owners within 200 feet of the request. If 20% of that land area within 200 feet of the request object to that request, that rezoning, then it requires supermajority approval by council to approve it. So it would require 6 out of 7 council members to approve that. Now, in terms of a cemetery, that's still, and Tina may correct me here, I'm gonna take a go at it, but the cemetery is still included in that 200 feet and that land area, as well as any roads. So that could impact it if there is a rezoning request similar like that.
So, and I guess to that point, so in kind of pick up on your question for just a moment. So if we have properties that are owned by businesses or commercial landowners, they have a right in the zoning process also, just like residents do. So zoning doesn't discriminate from a standpoint of if I own property, if I'm a residential owner versus a commercial owner, it gives me that same level of protection as a landowner to voice my opposition or to voice whether or not I'm in support of a request. So there are times when we receive zoning applications, when we draw the 200-foot boundary as well as the 500-foot boundary, that Many of the notices we send out will go to residential property owners. Sometimes many of the notices that we send out go to commercial property owners. A lot of it just depends upon where the property that is requesting the change is located, and then what's all around it. So all property owners have the ability to submit a written response to us, and it's important that we receive written responses when we send out, especially the mailed notice for the 200-foot notification. Because as Julie pointed out, if you're in opposition to requests, it's important that we have that opposition in writing. State law requires us to receive that opposition in writing. We do accept emails. Emails do count. We also have a means where you can email the planning and zoning commission as well. But we keep track of that feedback that we receive because we're very concerned about whether or not we've triggered what we refer to as the 20% rule that Julie spoke to. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is Julie talked about staff recommendations. So it's very important to understand that the staff recommendation is based upon adopted policies and requirements that City Council has put forth. So keep in mind the current City Council, they've inherited some policies that have been adopted previously in the city, as well as the regulations. We talk about the 2019 zoning code. When the city adopted those regulations, the council that was in effect, and the Planning and Zoning Commission that recommended to that council, they made that decision. So Councilmember Byrd, the mayor, I think he stepped away, they've inherited some of those decisions, but also as we work on amendments to zoning requirements, then they get to make decisions in the best interest of the community. So know that we as staff, we do the technical review. Our recommendations are based upon those policies that were adopted by adopted by the city councils in effect at that time. Same with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Commissioner McDade's in the back there. So and Commissioner Pruitt, when they're evaluating a request, they're evaluating that request based upon what are the adopted policies that the city has in place to see, okay, is the request or the proposed amendment consistent with those adopted policies? So bigger picture policies provide the framework, establish what our goals and vision and opportunity for the city is, and then the development regulations that get put in place. That's one of the tools that we use to help implement the policies that the city has adopted. So just want to help you understand our roles, because at the end of the day, we're doing technical compliance. We're helping our elected and appointed officials understand with what's being requested, if that's consistent with the goals and policies we put in place, or if it's not, we point that out to them as well. If it's not consistent, then most likely we will have a recommendation for denial. If it is consistent, then we'd be recommending approval. So I'll turn it back over to Julie. She's doing just a fabulous job. So.
Okay, last slide, I promise. We got thunder. You brought up that rail yard project that is on Sycamore. Mm-hmm. And I know that the developer is not here to talk about specifics, but I did just want to talk about it briefly in framework of our zoning code and that development process, just as a case study. So the subject property is on your screen. It is in the light purple. You'll see an MN on it. That zoning was part of the transition of the 2019 code. It actually transitioned from our 2002 code. So prior to 2019, the property had a zoning of DCG, which was our downtown commercial general zoning. It was actually kind of downzoned a little bit from the 2002 to the 2019. But multifamily was permitted by right in the 2002 code as well as the 2019 code. So it did not go through that discretionary zoning process in terms of the development on that one. They did come in for a pre-application and go through the zoning compliance plan and the plating, those requirements within that process. They are proposing that multifamily. It is still under review. It's not fully approved yet. I believe the final plat has not yet gone to the planning. Wednesday, okay. They are proposing 326 dwelling units, and once again, that use is permitted by right, so that's why it did not go through that public hearing process. That is my last slide. If y'all have any questions?
Did you say that Southeast Denton was classified as R4?
Well,
I thought that wasn't total Southeast Denton. The big yellow one. Did you say it was all?
Well, there's a substantial part of Southeast Denton that is R4, yes, sir. So you've got all of that area that's in kind of that tan color is the R4. The yellow is R3. That is another residential district. The subject property here is in this light pink. That's that MN. On
That's the
Peninsula,
railroad?
north of that is the MD. Yes, sir?
That's the railroad there, the pink or lavender?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, it is? Okay. Thought we own everything across the track. Okay, all right. So you say send out those letters to those dead people next door to the graveyard, they count or what?
Well, that project
I'm
did
being
not.
facetious, what you're saying. I mean, you send out letters to people that's next to the graveyard.
Well,
And
that
across the street is somebody's,
It's a club, and I want all 320 if it's a club, so I just got 320 new people coming to spend money. You got rubber gloves in the other place now, so of course they're gonna agree.
Well, that project, because the NN was established, they did not request a rezoning. That use was permitted by right. It was established with the 2002 development code and then transitioned with the 2019 code. So that zoning for that use had been in place. So there weren't letters sent because it did not have that public hearing.
I was just confused about when we began South Street, didn't
But we can still come to the planning and zoning on Wednesday and talk against it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was saying, if I could clarify that, so just real quick. So on Wednesday night is the plat, right? So the plat associated with the request, again, that goes back to, it's a plat, so the drawing, if it meets all the technical requirements of the city's ordinance, the Planning and Zoning Commission is obligated to approve it per state law. So you could all come and say, I don't like this project, I don't like the land use being proposed, but at the end of the day, because the plat, if it meets all the technical requirements of the city's ordinance, the Planning and Zoning Commission is obligated to approve it. So the Planning and Zoning Commission is not making a decision about the use of the property because the use was already established with the zoning being in place. So they're only making a decision where they say, yes, staff, we agree that the plat complies with all of the technical requirements, or no, it does not. And if they're saying no, it does not, then they're obligated now under state law to have to tell us why they believe it does not meet our technical requirement, including citing the provision. We help them with that and give them that information.
Good. I have an acronym for you. Have you heard of CBA?
No.
CBA is something that you need to train yourself up on if you're going to be doing a small area plan for this area. It stands for Community Benefit Agreement. And that's basically what Councilwoman Byrd did with this last one. When you were negotiating that if you're going to do these things, here's what you need to do back for the community. That goes into an agreement, and that's going to be possible.
So we'll look into that further. We also have to make sure that with those particular agreements, that we have to make sure that we're operating consistent within state law. So there are certain things that we, the city, can regulate, and then there are other aspects where if the developer is wanting to offer them up, so be it. But we have to make sure that the agreement is one that we can legally enter into here in the state of Texas. But we'll happy to look into that.
Time out, because this doesn't have to be controlled by the city. This is something that's done by the community and that developer, and don't you discount that.
I'm not discounting it all, Mr. Hunt. In fact, I would love to be able to research more about it to see how we can use that tool moving forward. But understand that it may not be something that the city as an organization can enter into.
I don't care about the city. I want you to talk to Councilman Paul Metzler. He wrote the op-ed about 2 weeks ago.
Go ahead, what's your question?
Well, this developers agreement is a hot topic throughout it. I represent another neighborhood association. I came particularly here so I can take this information back, because this is a hot topic throughout it. And it is, at what point in that process can we bring on CBA? Because I saw all the squares, but I didn't see anything that said then the community can come and talk, other than going to city council.
So that's just been something that's been brought to our attention, and like I said, we're happy to research it further and then see where it would fit in the development process. Like I said, if it's between the community, like a neighborhood and the developer, then it may not be necessarily something that we're involved with as part of our technical review, but it's with you, the neighborhood, working with the developer. So again, let us learn more about that so we can speak more intelligently about it, and then we can advise you on when that would be the appropriate place. My guess is just, given the little that what Mr. Hunt said and what you've mentioned, is that it's probably going to happen somewhere around the zoning time period, but don't quote me on that, because again, I would need to do some more research on it to understand that more.
My concern is the delay in the resources. The developers are still building, and there's a delay in the city's resources.
We're just asking for the city to help us in the whole understanding of the process of obtaining the property. We know you can't deny it because we as a community, they don't agree with our agreement, we want with them. We say, we want you to come in and set aside 20 apartments to be at a certain rate for renting. But we know we can't make them do that, but you guys legalese and help us as far as talking to them in an intelligent manner to make that happen. We want to, so they want them to be a good partner with us. We're not saying we can make them do anything.
All right, and we need to wrap it up because it is starting to.
And I was gonna say, I know Councilmember Byrd was able to negotiate some things with the developer, maybe some of their part and some commitments that they made that Julie and I don't have a role within. But again, let's look at that further. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you all, we appreciate it. Before we leave, I just wanted to make a quick announcement. They are having a celebration honoring Miss Sarah Parker on November the 5th from 4 to 6 p.m. at the American Legion Hall. She is one of 4 teachers that is still alive from the old Firgens school. So they're honoring her and 3 other teachers that are still alive. That's November the 5th.
November the 5th.
American Legion Hall from 4 to 6 p.m.
And Chief just claimed we had a good relationship with Chief.
Rev Logan.
We had Chief Jez.
Rev Logan.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. All right, with the t-shirts, come and get them. You get the t-shirt, it don't fit right, you don't like it, you don't have to pay for it, don't worry about it.
Hey, Miss
Come and get it.
Thank you, everybody.
You know,